People like you come in and take that all away, leaving me without my family.
I live 5 blocks from the accident. Christine and I were neighbors.
I am responsible for her.
I'm so very sorry for the lifelong pain I've caused you. People like you come in and take that all away, leaving me without my family.
This is a heartbreaking story. A 12-year-old Valley Center girl, the sole survivor of a tragic drunk driving crash that killed her entire family, finally spoke out after 2 years. She addressed the man who took her family's lives in a moving message. The accident occurred while the family was visiting a friend in Austin, Texas, and was on their way back to San Diego when the drunk driver struck their vehicle.
It was extremely emotional for her.
North County CHP officer Mark Vallow-Daybell describes the anguish Kira endured as she was forced to relive the traumatic experience.
Having to look at this again and place herself in that car again, I'm sure in her own mind was terrible.
Kira Vallow-Daybell confronted the man who killed 3 members of her family while they were on their way home from a vacation in Austin in November 2017.
And it made me miss out on so many things like daddy and daughter dances.
Her emotional message was aimed at Guy Brasted, the man who crashed head-on into the car carrying Kira and her family. The crash claimed the lives of her father, Scott, her mother, Nancy, and her brother, Jackson.
Jackson and I had something I can never have with someone else, and it kills me to know I will never have that feeling to anyone else anymore. Every day I think about him.
Brasted had a blood alcohol level more than twice the legal limit, and since that tragic day, Kira's uncle, Mark, has taken her in and raised her as his own.
I can't replace. I'm the fill-in. I'm a fill-in parent for someone who's tragically been, everything was robbed from her in one moment.
We spoke with Vallow-Daybell after he returned from the sentencing in Austin, Texas.
The worst thing that could possibly happen to anybody happened to her, all because of this gentleman's choice to drink and drive.
Brasted was sentenced to 18 years in prison after pleading guilty to 3 counts of intoxication manslaughter and making a judicial admission to 1 charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Each charge carried an 18-year sentence, but by accepting the plea deal, Brasted was allowed to serve all 3 sentences concurrently and receive credit for 2 years already served.
Given the chance to swap places with your family, I would gladly die if it would bring them back.
Mark, a CHP officer in North County, shared that his personal and professional lives have now intertwined, as the talks he typically gives to drunk drivers about the dangers of impaired driving have become a part of his own lived experience. He expressed this while taking the stand. Sorry just isn't enough, highlighting the deep sense of loss and the belief that words can't undo the damage caused.
I had to watch my daughter fight for her life while he was on the side of the road without a care in the world.
A devastated mother faced the man who took her young daughter's life. For a parent, burying their own child is the ultimate heartbreak, and that's what the Mack family had to endure. They confronted Charles Cahill, who admitted to killing Victoria Mack, claiming his confession was meant to spare the family a trial. Body camera footage played a key role in securing the conviction. For the family, his confession came far too late to ease their pain. This sentencing was among the most emotional, with a packed courtroom, and nearly everyone was deeply moved by the family's words.
I don't forgive you. You took something from me that is a very important part of my life.
Through tear-filled eyes, Darlena Savage gazed at the man who admitted to getting drunk, driving, and taking her daughter Victoria Mack's life in Sumter Township. Charles Cahill was speeding at 89 miles per hour on a 2-lane country road when he crashed into the family minivan, which was returning from a day at the beach. Victoria was in the back row. Assistant Prosecutor Reynolds brought the courtroom to a standstill as he reminded everyone of the harrowing moment when the mother reached through the shattered back window, desperately trying to save her daughter.
She's saying, Victoria, stay with us. Victoria, help's on the way.
You live around here?
One of the most shocking revelations came from the footage, which showed just how intoxicated Cahill was at the time of the crash. Adding to the horror, it was revealed that he had 12 prior drunk driving convictions.
You had plenty of opportunities to change your life, but you didn't. And my daughter had to pay the price.
And now, Cahill will face justice. He was sentenced to 27 to 50 years in prison for second-degree murder.
And some days I just cry because I miss her so much.
I am responsible for her. the death of Victoria Mack, 12-year-old child, that I can't forgive myself. I wish it was me.
He had 12 prior chances to change his ways. He doesn't deserve a 13th.
Since Cahill was not given a life sentence, his 27 to 50-year sentence does not automatically come with an appeal. However, he still has the option to appeal if he chooses. In addition to the second-degree murder charge, Cahill pleaded guilty to other offenses, including drunk driving causing death at the time of the crash. His license has been revoked for the past 30 years. A former Newport Beach police officer, Catherine Ann Heinzel, received a prison sentence after being convicted for causing the death of a Riverside man in a 2011 drunk driving incident. Although Heinzel faced a possible 26-year prison term, she was ultimately sentenced to just 9 years, sparking mixed reactions among the victims' families regarding whether the punishment was sufficient.
I'm so very sorry for the lifelong pain caused you.
A tearful Catherine Heinzel expressed her apologies to the family of Davion Kelly, the 20-year-old who lost his life in 2011 when his car was struck by Heinzel's vehicle on Interstate 15 while she was driving under the influence.
Please believe my words of remorse are genuine, and it's all I have to offer you.
Over a dozen family members shared their statements during sentencing, including Chris Walker, who was a passenger in Davion's car, and Brian Morast, who sustained severe injuries in the crash.
Now the fact that I don't see him, but I see his little brothers, I see his mom, it's hurtful to see their pain.
I want you to know and try to understand the hell you put my family through.
Heinzel sat quietly, and tear kept streaming throughout the entire proceeding.
Lady, if you ever take another drink in your life, I hope you drop where you stand. Amen.
The judge handed down a 9-year prison sentence to the retired officer. While the mothers of the 3 victims expressed their satisfaction with the outcome, Davon's father disagreed.
It doesn't feel just for a death. If it was a gang member or something killed somebody, they'd be facing life.
Heinzel expressed her regret, saying she wishes she could give something back. Instead, she will spend most of the next decade facing the consequences of the pain she caused to Davion Kelly's family. The courtroom was filled with grief.
This is the second worst day of my life.
The widow of a taxi driver killed by a drunk driver was forced to relive her nightmare just moments before the driver responsible began facing her own consequences. It was undoubtedly a heartbreaking scene. That tragic night forever changed many lives when a drunk driver entered the 5 freeway in the wrong direction via an off-ramp, triggering a chain of crashes that took the life of a father of 3. Amy St. John wiped away her tears as she heard the widow of the taxi driver condemning her for driving under the influence, which led to his tragic death.
You took away a loving, caring father from 3 beautiful little children.
The family of Antoine Manasseh shared photos, requesting that the children's faces be blurred. The mother's words were profoundly heartbreaking.
My 5-year-old said to me, "Mom, am I not too young not to have a dad? I wish Dad was alive, at least until I finish kindergarten."
St. John acknowledged making poor decisions that fateful night nearly 2 years ago when she drove the wrong way up the Washington Street off-ramp onto Interstate 5, crashing into Manasseh's taxi. She had been heavily intoxicated, with a blood alcohol level of 0.27%, more than triple the legal limit. When Manasseh stepped out of his cab to warn her, another vehicle struck his car, pushing him into oncoming traffic and him. St. John fled the scene, but was later apprehended at a nearby motel.
He did save my life, and the only reason why I turned around is because he did say, "Back up, you're going the wrong way."
The cab driver's friends showed no sympathy.
You caused so many people unbearable pain and grief. That night you decided to get drunk and drive. You murdered Antoine Manasseh.
Judge Louis Annan addressed the court, stating that St. John is not a monster, but emphasized her prior DUI, remarking that she had been on notice. Following the plea agreement, he sentenced her to 17 years and 8 months in prison.
There isn't any way that I can fix anything.
A 7-word expression of remorse and unexpected words from the victim's life. A judge remained unmoved by the tears of a woman convicted of running over a Tierra Santa teenager and leaving him to die in the street.
This is one of those cases that is the most aggravated. So based on that, the court will deny probation and sentence you to state prison for the upper term of 4 years.
Jessica Metzger was sentenced to 4 years in state prison for hitting and killing Alex Funk. She was in tears throughout the entire hearing.
The way I acted on March 9th in the following days was selfish and wrong. I let fear overshadow my sense of empathy.
Before her sentencing, Jessica Metzger apologized to Alex Funk's family, expressing her remorse for the tragic loss.
I'm sorry for the loss, and I would spend the rest of my life in jail if it would bring your little boy back.
However, Alex Funk's family was not present to hear her apology. They had already poured their hearts out during the original sentencing hearing.
You treated my child as less than a dog.
Alex's grandmother told Metzger that she had shown no remorse for what she had done.
How does a human being mow someone down and speed off without coming back to help?
Prosecutors highlighted that instead of stopping to assist Alex, Metzger accelerated, fleeing the scene. Alex had been walking with a friend when he was struck. Though the friend was unharmed, Metzger wasn't arrested until several days later, and she admitted to having taken a sip from her boyfriend's drink at a restaurant before the crash. The judge noted that Metzger's sister is already serving time in prison for a drunk driving incident in which she killed her passenger.
You didn't learn from your own sister.
The judge described this case as one of the most aggravated she has ever encountered.
You left a human being on the side of the road to die in the arms of his friend.
The judge also told Metzger that she hadn't learned from her sister's mistake, noting that her sister is currently serving time for driving drunk and causing the death of her passenger. In a deeply emotional courtroom, Katie McGrosso, convicted of a deadly DUI crash, faced the loved ones of her victim, but couldn't even bring herself to make eye contact. Just hours earlier, a judge sentenced her to nearly 12 years in prison. The tragic events unfolded at La Plata Mexican restaurant in Lakeside, where a couple, having dinner, was crossing the street when they were struck and killed by McGrosso, who was driving drunk. The victim's family, sharing their powerful words in court, made it clear how this senseless tragedy has affected their lives.
She was the brightest light. And then you had a way about her that would just put you in a good mood.
Travis Kennedy fought back tears as he spoke about his bright light, his mother, who was tragically killed by the drunk driver.
You took not only our mother, but you took a grandma from our children. You took a daughter from our grandma.
Katie McGrosso sat motionless during her sentencing, her head lowered as she absorbed the weight of the words spoken by the victim's family. Occasionally, she looked up, her eyes seemingly filled with tears, but she remained silent. The contrast between the family's grief and McGrosso's apparent remorse was painfully evident in the courtroom.
She believed that everyone deserved many chances.
On September 25th of last year, Katie McGrosso left a sushi restaurant after drinking shots of vodka, Fireball, and sake. Driving without headlights, she struck Lorraine Kennedy and her husband, David Sando, as they crossed the street. The couple had been visiting family to celebrate Kennedy's granddaughter's 4th birthday. While Sando survived the crash, Kennedy tragically did not. This was McGrosso's second DUI arrest, a fact that added even more weight to the devastating consequences of her actions.
You understood the consequences of your actions. You were taught what driving drunk can do.
Family and friends will always remember Lorraine Kennedy for her infectious laugh, boundless love, compassion, and remarkable ability to forgive. Yet, her son, Travis Kennedy, expressed that he isn't ready to forgive the woman responsible for his mother's death.
Katie, I cannot say that I forgive you today. I can only say that I understand mistakes happen, because I've made my fair share. I had a mother that taught me mistakes are okay, and as long as we learn from them, they were not mistakes, but only tough life lessons.
While her family was present in court, they chose not to speak with the media, opting for privacy during this difficult time. Katie McGrosso was initially charged with 4 felony counts, including second-degree murder, but changed her plea to guilty on 2 counts of gross vehicular manslaughter and DUI causing bodily injury. As part of a plea agreement, the 22-year-old was sentenced to 11 years and 8 months in prison for the deadly DUI crash. The sentence, handed down by a San Diego judge, ensures McGrosso will spend more than a decade behind bars. The driver, who hit and killed a Carlsbad mother while she was riding an e-bike with her has been sentenced. The emotional hearing, held in Vista, marked the first time we heard from the defendant, Lindsay Termel, since the deadly crash nearly a year and a half ago. Just hours ago, a judge sentenced Termel to 90 days in county jail, followed by 90 days of home detention or home confinement. The tragic incident occurred on August 7th, 2022. Both the defense and prosecution agreed that it was a day that altered many lives. Carlsbad mother Christine Embry was riding her e-bike with her 7-month-old daughter Delilah when she was struck by a vehicle driven by Termel. Christine died from her injuries, but her daughter miraculously escaped unscathed. The prosecution claims that Termel was distracted while driving, though authorities confirmed she remained at the scene of the crash. In court, Termel described her shock and disbelief. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom, as both Termel and Christine's family members shared their emotional statements.
I live 5 blocks from the accident. Christine and I were neighbors, although we have never met. I have lived in Carlsbad most of my life. I live within a mile of where this tragic accident took Christine's life. This is my community. The people here are important to me. The fact that I took the life of someone in my own community is even more devastating. I cannot imagine what this has been like for you. I have prayed for your comfort. I have prayed for you to heal. I have prayed for your understanding, and I have prayed for your forgiveness.
So if God and if Christine have forgiven you, why wouldn't I? I forgive you.
No sentence or punishment can bring my sister back, but we hope that it serves as a reminder to Lindsay and others that actions have consequences.
Your Honor, I would encourage alternative forms of punishment be laid. I don't know that 1 year in jail solves any problems.
That moment in the courtroom was just a small glimpse of the overwhelming emotion present throughout the proceedings. Lindsay Termel will begin serving her 90-day sentence behind bars on February 1st. Under California law, the maximum sentence for the charge she faced was 365 days, but she will only serve 90 days in jail, followed by 90 days of home confinement. The judge emphasized in court that he hopes this case serves as a stark reminder to everyone in the community about the importance of staying focused and paying attention while behind the wheel. Shocking statements came from a woman accused of driving drunk twice in 1 month, with the second incident tragically resulting in the death of a man.
How much did you drink tonight, okay?
I didn't.
I can smell some alcohol on you.
Okay. That doesn't mean I wasn't with people.
Gabrielle Moya was captured on lapel camera, telling officers she was not driving drunk on the night of October 18th. However, police say she ran a red light in northeast Albuquerque, crashing into a man on his motorcycle, resulting in his death.
Tell me again why you're driving so fast.
What?
Tell me again why you're driving so fast.
I was just in a hurry to go.
The officer attempted to administer a sobriety test, but Moya refused, claiming she needed to use the bathroom. A female officer escorted her, but upon returning, Moya still refused to cooperate with the authorities.
I don't want anybody here right now except for my mom and dad.
Okay, well listen, Gabriel, if you don't comply with these, then I'm just going to have to place you under arrest.
Eventually, Moya agreed to perform the sobriety test, but when asked to walk a straight line, she stumbled during the turn. The officer then decided to arrest her. This was the second time in less than a month that Moya faced accusations of driving under the influence. Once at the station, her behavior shifted drastically. She began cursing at officers who were attempting to place her in a cell.
You guys are such
Moya remains in custody, with her bond set at $350,000 for both DWI cases. Police noted that no ignition interlock device was installed on her car after her first DWI arrest. Court officials explained that the decision to implement such a device typically falls to the judge and usually occurs only after a second drunk driving offense.
State of Wisconsin versus Abby Dominski.
Wearing a protective vest and a neck brace, 23-year-old Abby Dominski stood before a Waukesha County Court judge.
The defendant was at a baseball game. She drank. She admitted to the officers that she had several drinks.
Around 11:30 at night, Waukesha County Sheriff's deputies responded to a crash on Highway 164 near Jay Lane in the town of Lisbon. They found 44-year-old Candace Franco dead in one car, having been hit head-on by an SUV driven by 23-year-old Abby Dominski.
Despite the fact that this is a first offense, the state does believe that The defendant is a risk to the community.
Deputies found another car in a ditch, and the driver explained he swerved to avoid the SUV, causing his vehicle to roll over. Fortunately, he survived with only cuts and bumps. Dominski was flown to Frotert Hospital, where she allegedly told deputies she had been drinking at a Brewers game. When asked to count backward from 15 by twos, she mistakenly counted down from 10 to 1. Prosecutors requested a $35,000 bond, while Dominski's lawyer asked for it to be set at $15,000.
No prior record. That's a significant amount of money. It'll certainly ensure her return to the jurisdiction of the court.
The commissioner had another amount in mind.
That you pose such an extreme danger to our community that the court is concerned as to whether you would return to court and follow the bail conditions. The court is ordering cash bail in the amount of $100,000.
If found guilty, Dominski could have faced up to 25 years in prison. She is scheduled to return to court, where her attorney plans to address the $100,000 bond. Ultimately, Dominski was sentenced to 6 years in prison, followed by 8 years of extended supervision. Initially, she was charged with homicide by intoxicated use of a vehicle and operating while intoxicated, causing injury. However, on the day of sentencing, Dominski pleaded no contest to the homicide charge, resulting in the dismissal of the OWI causing injury charge. In January 2023, a deeply tragic event occurred in Hexham, Northumberland, involving Logan MacPhail and his ex-girlfriend, Holly Newton. After their relationship ended earlier that month, Logan struggled to accept Holly's decision and became fixated on rekindling it. On January 26th, he traveled to her hometown of Haltwhistle, despite her request for him not to visit. Unable to see her that evening, he became increasingly agitated. The following day, January 27th, MacPhail followed Holly and her friends around Hexham Town Center for nearly an hour. Surveillance footage later revealed him attempting to remain out of sight as he shadowed their movements. He eventually convinced Holly to speak with him in a more private area. Tragically, during this encounter, an altercation occurred, resulting in Holly sustaining fatal injuries. Despite immediate efforts to help her, Holly sadly passed away.
I'm satisfied that earlier in January 2023, Holly indicated that the relationship was at an end, and you realized that this time she meant it for good. You were not able to accept that. You were obsessed with Holly and by your desire to resume the relationship. On Thursday, the 26th of January, you made the journey to Haltwhistle, where Holly lived. You travelled from your home. You caught a bus at about 6 p.m. and another bus at 7:51 p.m. You arrived in Haltwhistle at 8:21 p.m. and walked in the direction of her house. Holly was not in and had told you not to come. She did not answer your calls. You were filled with resentment and jealousy, but still able to calculate where you could best attack her and able to wait until you got that opportunity. You managed to persuade her to come a little further into the alleyway. You waited until one passerby had gone on his way, and then took out the knife which you had in your pocket and launched an attack upon her.
Logan was detained at the scene and charged with murder. During his trial at Newcastle Crown Court, evidence such as CCTV footage and witness testimonies painted a picture of a troubled boy, unable to cope with the end of the relationship.
You have, for example, applied yourself to your education. You have established good relationships with members of staff. I am sure that you can make further progress if you continue to try whilst you are in custody. You can definitely do better than you sometimes think. I have sought to balance all the factors of the case, those that make it more serious and those that mitigate the sentence I must pass. However, because it is such a serious case, personal circumstances cannot carry great weight, although they have more significance than they might have for an older person. But the stark facts are that you made the decision to stab a 15-year-old girl to death with a knife which you were carrying unlawfully in a public place, having followed her in secret around town for an hour. All because your relationship with her had ended and you were jealous at the thought that she might see someone else. What happened in this case should not happen to any child or parent, and no child or parent should be in fear that it might happen.
During sentencing, the judge acknowledged MacPhail's autism and learning difficulties, but emphasized the severity of his actions. While MacPhail had shown potential in other aspects of his life, including education and relationships with staff, the judge determined that these factors could not outweigh the gravity of his crime.
As I've said, this is not a mathematical exercise. There is no single correct figure to attribute to a particular aggravating or mitigating feature. What matters is the finishing point. In the end, the length of the minimum term is a matter for my overall judgment, always taking care not to count the same feature more than once in any direction. It will be as short as I think it properly can be. You must pay the statutory surcharge of £41 and make a deprivation order in respect of the knife under Section 152 of the Sentencing Act 2020. For the offence of wounding with intent, the sentence is one of 5 years detention under Section 250 of the Sentencing Act 2020 to run concurrently with your minimum term, so at the same time. I pass no separate penalty for possessing the knife. Logan MacPhail, for the murder of Holly Newton on the 27th of January 2023. The sentence is that you are to be detained at His Majesty's pleasure. That could not be for a period less than 17 years in total. Because you have already spent 641 days in custody, I have to deduct those days. And so the minimum term I now specify is one of 15 years and 89 days to run from today.
On November 10th, 2024, Logan was sentenced to life detention with a minimum term of 17 years, with 641 days already spent in custody deducted from his minimum term. For an additional charge of wounding with intent, he received a 5-year sentence to run concurrently, and no separate penalty was issued for possessing the knife. On November 6, 2019, Brianna Williams, a Navy petty officer, reported her daughter, Taylor Rose Williams, missing from their Jacksonville, Florida home. She claimed to have found the back door unlocked and Taylor gone, prompting a massive search involving local authorities, volunteers, and federal agencies. However, inconsistencies in Williams' statements quickly drew suspicion. Authorities uncovered evidence that she had made multiple trips between Jacksonville and Demopolis, Alabama, shortly before Taylor's disappearance. Surveillance footage and witness accounts placed her near the area where Taylor's remains were eventually discovered.
Court is that the victim was not valued from the time of conception by either her father or mother, that her mother suffered, the defendant, from an eating disorder, that the father complained that the victim was not being properly fed. The defendant then removed the victim from daycare approximately 4 months to the victim, prior to the victim's death. Taylor remained home alone and unprovided for throughout that time period. There was no significant purchase of groceries during that time period. There were some fast food purchases, but no more. No significant food in the home or the apartment. The food present in the refrigerator was unfit to eat. There was a hole in a juice can from which, there was a hole from a fruit can from which juice could be consumed. That was an argument made by the state, and that is supported by the record. There were photos submitted for the court's consideration, and I did notice a change in the child's appearance, particularly immediately surrounding the time of death. She appeared small and as if she were losing weight. Again, we have no opinion regarding the cause of death because the defendant acted in a way that prevented that review. According to her testimony, she found Taylor Rose slumped over in a closet, unresponsive, and she knew that she was dead. Thereafter, the defendant failed to report the death of her daughter. She then lied to law enforcement repeatedly over the course of the investigation in order to conceal what she had done, which was to transport the body out of state and dispose of the body, which this court construes as a consciousness of guilt. When the bones of Taylor Rose were analyzed, they were consistent with malnutrition. There is evidence in the record then to draw a reasonable inference that although firearms were present and blood splatter was documented in the bathroom, the death was in all probability a consequence of starvation.
On November 12, 2019, human remains were found in a wooded area in Demopolis, Alabama, later confirmed to be Taylor Rose Williams. The investigation revealed significant neglect and abuse. Taylor had been withdrawn from daycare months earlier and was often left unattended. Investigators discovered her skeletal remains showed signs of malnutrition, and the Williams apartment lacked sufficient food. With what little was there being spoiled? Brianna Williams also lied repeatedly to law enforcement, delaying the investigation. The case further exposed troubling reports from neighbors who had seen Taylor wandering alone and noted a foul odor coming from the apartment.
I've examined the mitigation that has been offered by the defendant. It's important to recall that we are here today.
In March 2022, Brianna Williams pleaded guilty to second-degree murder as part of a plea agreement. The plea allowed the court to focus on her culpability in Taylor's death, dropping additional charges of child abuse and neglect. During her sentencing hearing, the court considered mitigating factors such as Williams' lack of prior criminal history, her exemplary military service, and personal hardships, including an unstable upbringing. However, these were weighed against aggravating factors, including her neglect of Taylor, the appalling living conditions, and her subsequent attempts to cover up the crime by disposing of Taylor's body and lying to investigators.
You had a duty to provide care for your child, including the provision of food, and over the course of a 4-month period failed to do so, resulting in her death. Coming now to the sentence, if you please stand with your attorney. Considering the aggravating and the mitigating factors, wanting to ensure that the community is protected and that a sentence is rendered in a way that does not dishonor the death of Taylor Rose, the court sentences you to life in prison. Madam Clerk, can you give me credit for time served, please?
You have 1,043 days, Judge.
1,043 days credit for time served. You'll pay $600, correct that. Madam Clerk, is it $518?
$518 on $150.
$518 and $150 public defender fee. Are you asking me to convert it to a civil judgment?
Yes, Judge.
I'll convert the matter to a civil judgment. Ms. Williams, I take no pleasure in pronouncing the sentence. You have 30 days from today's date to take an appeal of the sentence if you believe any portion to be illegal. If you can't afford an attorney for that purpose, I'll appoint the public defender to represent you. It's a tragedy all the way around. I wish the families well. Anything further from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further from the defense?
No, Judge.
You're adjourned. Thank you all. Just one moment. Before we take her out, just one moment, Mr. Beard. Madam Clerk, I want to make sure that I adjudicate the defendant guilty rather than just pronounce a sentence. Did I adjudicate her guilty?
No, Judge.
That's essential. I thought I missed that part. Let's go ahead and bring her back so that the record is clear. Ms. Williams, if you'd step back to the podium, please. I moved right into the sentence, forgetting that this is not a jury trial, but a plea. I adjudicate you guilty in light of your plea. I find a factual basis to support the plea. In light of the adjudication of guilt for second-degree murder, I sentence you to life in prison with credit for 1,013 days time served. You'll pay $518 in court costs and a $150 public defender fee. I've converted it to a civil judgment. You have 30 days from today's date to take an appeal of the sentence if you believe any portion to be illegal. If you can't afford an attorney for that purpose, I'll appoint a public defender.
On September 20th, 2022, Brianna Williams was sentenced to life in prison. The judge emphasized the severity of Taylor's death, concluding that she likely died from starvation, a result of prolonged neglect. Williams' actions, including her efforts to conceal the crime, demonstrated a conscious disregard for life. She was credited for 1,043 days already served. This case underscores the profound consequences of child neglect and abuse, serving as a grim reminder of the duty to protect vulnerable ones and the severe penalties for failing to do so. Lori Vallow. Daybell's case first came to public attention following the mysterious disappearance of her daughter, Tylee Ryan, and son, Joshua J.J. Vallow, in September 2019. Their absence was reported after family members, particularly JJ's grandparents, expressed concerns about their well-being. Efforts to locate the girl and boy intensified when Lori failed to cooperate with authorities or provide credible explanations for their whereabouts. Simultaneously, questions arose surrounding the sudden death of Lori's fourth husband, Charles Vallow, who had been fatally shot by Lori's brother, Alex Cox, in July 2019. Alex claimed self-defense, but evidence later revealed inconsistencies in his account. Charles had previously expressed fears for his life, alleging that Lori believed she was a godlike figure preparing for an apocalyptic event. In October 2019, Tammy Daybell, the first wife of Chad Daybell, Lori's new husband, died unexpectedly. Initially ruled as natural causes, her death was later reclassified as suspicious when investigators found evidence of asphyxiation. Lori and Chad married just weeks after Tammy's death, further heightening suspicions. Around this time, Brandon Boudreaux, the ex-husband of Lori's niece, Melanie Pawlowski, survived an attempt on his life. He alleged Lori and her associates were involved, pointing to their shared apocalyptic beliefs and growing radicalism. The investigation reached a devastating conclusion in June 2020 when authorities discovered the remains of Tylee and JJ buried on Chad Daybell's property in Rexburg, Idaho. Chad was arrested immediately after the discovery, and Lori had already been taken into custody earlier that year for failing to produce her daughter and son when ordered by the court. The evidence pointed to a deliberate and premeditated effort to conceal their death.
Burned, mutilated, and dismembered, and buried like animals.
Authorities uncovered that Lori and Chad were deeply involved in a doomsday-focused religious group. They believed in light and dark spirits, categorizing individuals as either good or evil. According to witnesses, Lori claimed her daughter and son had become dark spirits, implying a justification for their deaths. This belief system became a cornerstone of the prosecution's argument, highlighting the couple's radicalization and conspiratorial mindset. Lori and Chad were charged with multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. Lori also faced additional charges in Arizona for conspiring to kill Charles Vallow and attempting to kill Brandon Boudreaux. Lori Vallow-Daybell's trial began in Idaho in 2023. Prosecutors presented extensive evidence, including cell phone data, financial records, and chilling testimonies from close associates. Witnesses described Lori's manipulative behavior and her unwavering belief in Chad's apocalyptic teachings. Chad's role as the spiritual leader in their plans was also emphasized.
And it is a loss for everyone that you took them away from this world. And it is the most shocking thing, really, I can imagine, is that a mother, her own children, and you simply have no remorse for it. Even sitting here today, there's no remorse for what you did. After all of this evidence through trial, you haven't shown any remorse. You haven't said you're sorry. You haven't done anything to seek leniency from this court. There's been a lot of people during trial and here who have explained the devastation you're responsible for, and you've forever altered the lives, not in a good way, for many, many people, destroying family relationships, taking people away that were loved, cared for, and needed. You may not believe to this day that you've done anything wrong, and you still may think you're justified by your religious beliefs for what happened here. I'm not here to judge that, but I don't believe that any God in any religion would want to have this happen, what happened here. And your crimes are heinous and egregious, and that alone.
The judge described her actions as calculated and horrific, condemning her lack of remorse.
The same serious sentence. So on count one, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception, you're sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. On count three, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception, You're sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. And on count 5, the conspiracy to commit the first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell, you're sentenced to the custody of the State Board of Corrections to serve the maximum allowed sentence, a fixed determinate term of life imprisonment with no possibility of parole. Finally, the court will address count 7, which is the charge of grand theft. On that charge, court is going to sentence you to a fixed determinate term of 5 years of prison, followed by an indeterminate term of 5 years of prison for a total 10-year term of imprisonment on the grand theft. Court will next consider whether sentences should be imposed consecutively or concurrently. I'm a pragmatic person, and I've struggled with the point of a consecutive sentence when in Idaho, a life sentence is just that, a life sentence without parole. And I've thought it through. However, when I looked at this case and the more I thought about it, I've determined that because there are 3 separate murders with 3 separate victims that occurred at 3 separate times, then running counts concurrently would not serve the interests of justice, because those crimes all need to be taken into account separately and distinctly and individually. And you need to be held accountable separately for each of the 3 murders. So on those counts, the court will run consecutively the count 2 murder of Tylee Ryan, consecutive to count 4, the murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow, and count 5 will run consecutive to count 2 and 4, the conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell. So 3 consecutive life terms of prison. The remaining counts will be concurrent to the counts that are consecutive. The court will impose fines as requested by the state in the amount of $25,000 for all counts except the grand theft. On the grand theft, the fine will be in the amount of $1,000. The court will assess the civil penalty that was requested, and I find it's appropriate under Idaho Code 195307 of $5,000 per victim on each of the 3 victims as a civil penalty. And then finally, the restitution.
In May 2023, Lori was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy charges for the deaths of Tylee, JJ, and Tammy Daybell. In July, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
You do understand that you have the right to have attorneys represent you during your cases?
I do.
What grade did you finish in school?
I graduated from high school.
Do you read and understand English?
I do.
Have you had any drugs, alcohol, or medication in the last 24 hours?
No.
Are you currently prescribed any medications in the jail?
No.
Do you believe you're able to present a defense at trial?
I do.
Are you able to listen to what the court, counsel, and witnesses say during trial?
Yes, I will.
Do you believe you're able to ask witnesses questions that are relevant to the case and to your defense?
Absolutely.
Are you able to communicate effectively, do you believe, with the court, counsel, opposing counsel, and the jury?
I do.
I will make a finding that in court you do appear to act appropriately, speak appropriately, and communicate appropriately. Have you ever represented yourself before?
Not yet.
I do have a waiver form, one for each of your cases. You've gone over that waiver form with your attorneys?
I did.
You understand the waiver forms?
I did.
You have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney, I would appoint one to represent you. The attorney would represent you at all critical stages of the case, including before trial, at trial, and if you're found guilty at sentencing. Do you understand that?
I do.
An attorney can be of great value and assistance in criminal cases. There are serious disadvantages and dangers to representing yourself. Can you just tell me a little bit why you want to represent yourself?
Yes, Your Honor. For the past 5 years that I've been incarcerated, I have taken it upon myself to study case law and criminal rules of procedure in the state of Idaho and Arizona, as well as federally. Prior to that, for the last 10 years, prior to my incarceration, I did study procedure in family law, and I have real trial experience. I have participated in 3 different full trials from beginning to end.
In family court?
1 in family court, 2 in criminal court, 1 bench trial and 1 jury trial.
Okay. You understand that you have 2 separate cases here. On each of these cases, if you're found guilty at trial, you'd be facing a sentence of up to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years?
Yes, I'm well aware of that.
And you understand that if convicted at trial, that those sentences could run consecutively or concurrently to any other sentence?
I am also well aware of that.
All right. You understand that if you represent yourself, you'll have the sole responsibility for, among other things, asserting legal defenses, interviewing witnesses, doing investigation, doing legal research, filing and arguing motions, examining and cross-examining witnesses, giving an opening statement and a final argument to the jury. Do you understand all that?
Yes, Your Honor, and I'm very prepared.
All right. Do you also understand that you'd be held to the same standard as an attorney regarding the presentation of your case? This would include knowledge of courtroom procedure, applicable case law, rules of evidence, and rules of procedure?
Yes.
All right. Each of your attorneys have gone to college, undergrad degree for probably a minimum of 4 years, and then law school for an additional 3 years. So these 2 attorneys that are here in court each have, at a minimum, if not more, 14 years of higher education, as well as probably, I'm guessing, between the 2 of them, 30 to 40 years in trial experience. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Do you understand that your case may be specifically complicated in the sense that there are complicated evidentiary issues in your case? Do you believe you're able to present a defense?
Chad Daybell's trial is scheduled to begin in 2024, with prosecutors seeking the death penalty. Lori also faces a separate trial in Arizona in 2025 for her alleged involvement in Charles Vallow's murder and Brandon Boudreaux's attempted murder. Lori is competent to stand trial and represent herself. She cited her years of personal legal study during incarceration and previous experiences in family and criminal court trials as her basis for the decision. The court ensured that she understood her rights, the complexities of the cases, and the potential challenges of self-representation. Despite the court emphasizing the risks and difficulties involved, Vallow expressed confidence in her ability to handle her defense. The judge approved her request and appointed her current attorneys as advisory counsel to assist if needed. Vallow's trial for the Charles Vallow murder conspiracy case is scheduled to begin with jury selection on March 31st, 2025. Lori Vallow-Daybell is currently incarcerated, serving her life sentences in Idaho. Country music star Morgan Wallen faced legal troubles following an incident in April 2024 at Chief's Bar in Nashville, Tennessee. On the evening of April 7th, Wallen, while reportedly intoxicated, threw a chair off the rooftop of the 6th floor bar. The chair landed approximately 3 feet from 2 police officers standing on the street below, narrowly avoiding causing harm. The dangerous act led to his immediate arrest and subsequent legal proceedings.
Floor of the rooftop bar, the defendant picked up a chair, threw it off the 6th floor. The chair landed on Broadway, approximately 3 feet from where Officers Gavin Treese and Officer Yaroslav Holokov were standing, placing them in imminent danger of serious bodily injury.
Following his arrest, Wallen faced 2 misdemeanor charges of reckless endangerment.
All these events happened in Nashville-Davidson County, and based on those facts, the state would recommend the previously announced agreement. And Your Honor, I'd like to say that Officers Gavin Treese and Officer Holokov were both consulted about this plea and both approved it.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Wallen, did you hear the facts as read by the Assistant District Attorney?
I did hear that.
Are those facts true and correct?
Substantially, yes.
Are you waiving your right here today and entering a plea of guilty in your pending case?
Conditionally guilty, yes. Conditionally guilty, yes, ma'am.
in case number 2024-I-687, where you were charged with 2 counts of reckless endangerment. How do you plead, sir?
Conditionally guilty.
All right, Mr. Robinson, anything further before I accept the plea?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Wallen, based upon your plea of guilty, I do find you guilty. I find there is a factual basis for the plea, that you are competent to enter the plea, and that you're doing so freely, knowingly, and voluntarily, so I will place into effect the previously announced plea agreement.
During the court proceedings, Wallen admitted to his actions, stating that his behavior was inappropriate and expressing remorse. He entered a guilty plea as part of a plea agreement.
You are under oath, and that means you've sworn to tell the truth. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You have provided the court with a plea petition that has a signature. Did you sign this petition?
Yes, ma'am.
And before you signed it, did you have an opportunity to read it in its entirety to yourself, or to have it read to you by your attorney, or some combination of those things?
Yes, ma'am.
And during the time that you were reading the petition, or it was being read to you, if you had any questions, were they answered to your satisfaction?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you believe you fully and completely understand the contents of this plea petition as you stand here today?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, you are charged by way of what's called a criminal information. I need to talk to you about that just a little bit. Anytime you're charged with a crime, you have a right to have the Davidson County grand jury hear your case. The grand jury is a body that investigates whether a crime has occurred, what level of crime, and whether or not you had any involvement in the crime. By signing a criminal information.
On December 12, 2024, a Nashville court sentenced Wallen to 2 years of supervised probation and 7 days in a DUI education center. Additionally, he was fined $350 and required to pay court fees. The terms of his probation include maintaining lawful behavior and attending all mandated programs. The court indicated that successful completion of these terms could make Wallen eligible for dismissal of the charges and possible expungement from his record. Despite the legal issues, Wallen's professional life remained robust. He was honored as Entertainer of the Year at the 2024 CMA Awards and concluded his One Night at a Time tour in October. This incident serves as a reminder of his personal challenges, even as his career continues to thrive. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.